I hear the sound of rage popping. It spins like a creaking windmill blade, tearing apart the sky, but reflecting the eyes of those who mock it as nothing more than the wind. The unleashed fury, wearing a mask of freedom, runs like a wolf that has torn off an iron chain. But you never notice the length of the shadows that follow. Few know that it is under the light that the blackest darkness is born, and even at the edge of their angry mouths, a cynical smile creeps in. The art of deception, it is not to hide, but to show. Even the fiery cries are actually the opening act of a cleverly designed theater. When the tongue that claims to be righteous unknowingly licks the honey of deception, it indeed reassembles a liberating and elaborate fetters. When anger takes form, it is already being used by someone else. When we realize this, the next rage has already drawn the curtain. Doubting the destination of all anger is like a thunderclap that rips through the sky, a fever that erupts from the depths of consciousness. People call that ignition point justice, and they also call it violence. Behind the voices crying out for freedom lurk words that were once held captive, and their shadows, even in the light, reflect the shape of darkness. The scissors that break the iron chain, the elaborate key of a further cage. It is an outside power, an inner prisoner or accomplice. They do not wish to be liberated, but only to build a more elaborate pyre to keep the fuel of resentment alive. Deception, or the brocade of deception. It has the face of anger and sometimes the face of hope. If even the revolution, which is touted as the liberation of freedom, is set up as the beginning of the next order, the liberation of chagrin is merely a more sophisticated deception. The blueprint of the next cage is read out on the reflection of himself on the blade of the sword. When the ripples of the angry voice explode, what is forgiven in the name of liberation, and chagrin rages like a storm, a carefully calculated act of freedom. The fury that burns with delayed vengeance pretends to have burned away the cage of the heart, but in fact it has built a new cage. What the release of anger brings is not release itself, but the beginning of a new curse. The more one raises one's voice, the more one falls into the trap of silence. The more they cry out for freedom, the more they are trapped by the fetters of words. Liberation has a sweet sound, but at times it is also a deception. We deceive, we are deceived, and we are deceived. When we let go of our anger, it takes on a more subtle form. Let go of resentment, but carefully. Do not let the swell of rage erode reason. Do not create more deception in the name of liberation. Freely lash out and transcend your anger. Beyond the sharp deception, true liberation awaits. A burning flame is a silent, dripping poison. With each burst of rage, the self is transformed into something else. Words echoing like curses. The moment one spits out indignation, one carves a wound in the world. The rain of freedom drips from that wound, drops of iron casting new fetters. Anger does not speak truth, but wears a mask of deception. The voice of purity is a nonsense to justify itself. In the name of liberation, anger also shapes the world, just as the raging waves break through the rocks. But it is not always in the form we want it to be. When we let go of ourselves in the heat of passion, we let go of ourselves. When words become blades, is it your essence that is cut into pieces, or is it your true nature that is directed at the other person? Where the released anger goes, there is the truth without deception, or a sharply sharpened deception. When you believe that shattering the mirror is liberation, no one will know who you were. The trajectory of an arrow shot into space is never a straight line. The moment it leaves the shooter's intention, the arrow is tossed by the wind, pulled by gravity, and even the refraction of light must be taken into account. It is never a simple radiation, but the sum of entangled dynamics, or liberation as deception. The indignation that burns like wildfire eventually becomes entangled in its own logic and leads to a cage of self-deluding fictions. The rage is often transformed by echoes and eventually loses its own meaning and falls into a deeper deception. Passion is not transparent. It is always accompanied by some distortion. But it is that distortion that casts a shadow over our psyche, and it is that shadow that makes our thoughts vivid. If we release our rage, we must doubt its trajectory and remember that it is not a straight line, but a sharp curve that deceives us. The gently unleashed rage ripples silently, vibrating everything it touches, yet deep down, something unspoken still lies submerged. It rides the wind and is permeated by light, quietly changing its form. It is connected to the world, like a thunderclap that knows no explosion, or a dull, smoldering flame.